Most best man speeches fail in the first 30 seconds, and everyone in the room knows it. You can feel it. If you're the best man, the groom, or the bride, this is one of those moments you don't want to get wrong. Because the truth is, great speeches get remembered, but bad ones do too. And those are usually the ones that end up online. And if the speech does go sideways, it gets uncomfortable fast. Now, if you're the best man, you're thinking, I just need to get through this. If you're the groom, you're hoping this doesn't turn awkward. And if you're the bride, you're thinking, please let this be good. And the moment the best man starts speaking, the entire room knows within seconds whether it's working or not. Here's what most people get wrong. This doesn't come down to being naturally funny or being a great public speaker. It comes down to having a clear structure, knowing what works, and being prepared to deliver it with confidence. Most speeches fall apart for the same reasons. They ramble, they rely on inside jokes, they try too hard to be funny, or they depend on a little too much liquid courage to get through it. In this video, I'm going to show you how to write and deliver a best man speech that actually works. One that keeps people engaged, gets real laughs, and actually lands the way it should. Let's start with why most speeches fail and how to make sure yours doesn't. Here's where most best man speeches fall apart. They treat this like a speech they have to get through. Instead of a moment they're helping create. So they think, I'll tell a few funny stories, say something meaningful at the end, and I'll figure it out as I go. And that's exactly why it doesn't come together. Because the best speeches feel natural, but they're not random. They follow a clear path. If you don't know where you're going, the room won't either. You're not giving a series of toasts. You're guiding the room from who he was to who he's become. That's the difference. When there's no direction, people check out. When there is, they follow you. And that's what turns a speech people just sit through into a moment they actually enjoy being part of. So now that you know what causes most speeches to fall apart, let's walk through a structure that actually works. There's a natural flow to everything. You don't jump straight to the first dance before the ceremony, and your speech should follow that same kind of order. For the opening, start simple. Introduce yourself briefly, acknowledge the moment, and settle into it. This isn't where you try to be the funniest person in the room. It's just enough to get everyone's attention. And give yourself a few seconds to find your rhythm. Now, once you've settled in, this is where you move into the main part of your speech. It's called the story thread. This is the main part of your speech, and where most people go wrong. Instead of telling 3 or 4 separate stories, build one continuous thread. Think about who he was, what he was like, and what stayed consistent over time. Pull small moments from different points, but connect them so it feels like one story unfolding, not a highlight reel jumping all over the place. And as that story starts to come together, this is where you naturally bring in his partner. And this should feel natural, not forced. You're not switching topics, you're just continuing the story. What changed? What's different now? What did you notice? Even if you didn't know them well, you can speak to what you've seen or how the groom has changed. And once you've brought both of them into the picture, this is where you take a step back for a moment. This is where everything slows down just a little. You've had the humor, you've told the story, now you make it matter. What makes him who he is. Why does this relationship work? This doesn't need to be long, it just needs to be real. Because this is the part people remember most. And once you've said that, you're ready to bring it home. You close it out. Short, clear, confident. Invite everyone to raise your glass and finish strong. No rambling, no extra stories at the end, just a clean finish. When you follow this structure, you're never guessing what's next. You always know where you are, and that alone removes a lot of the pressure. Because now you're not trying to perform your way through it, you're just moving from one part to the next. Now, before you start putting this together, there are a few things that can quietly ruin it. This is where a lot of good intentions fall apart. So let's quickly cover what to avoid. First, long stories with no clear point. If it takes too long to get there, you lose the room before you ever reach the payoff. It's like a ceremony that never quite gets to the I do. At some point, people start wondering, where's this going? Second, inside jokes. If only 5 people understand it, it doesn't belong in the speech. You want the entire room with you, not just the people who were there when it happened. Third, trying too hard to be funny. The moment it feels forced, people feel it. You don't need a stand-up routine. Just be real and let the humor come from that. Fourth, overthinking. By the time you stand up to speak, everyone has already been thanked. You don't need to repeat it. Just get into it. And finally, relying on liquid courage to carry you through it. A drink might take the edge off, but it also takes away control. And control is what keeps you clear and focused and respectful of the moment. Because once you lose that, it's really hard to get it back. And that's usually when something gets said that, wasn't supposed to. And that's the part you'll regret later for a long time. So if you avoid these mistakes, you're already ahead of most people before you even start writing. Now, with that foundation in place, let's talk about the part everyone thinks about, how to actually make this funny, because that's usually where the pressure comes from. Here's where people get it wrong. They think they need to write jokes. You don't. You need to notice what's already funny. Most of the time, the funniest thing you can say is something that's true. The best humor in a speech like this comes from observation. Things that are true, but said in a way people recognize immediately. Think about the groom. What are the small things about him that stand out? The habits, the patterns, the things he always does, especially the ones that haven't changed over the years. That's where the humor is. And once you start noticing those things, you can build on them. You can use contrast, who he was versus who he is now, what he said he'd never do versus what he's doing now. Those small shifts, that's what gets people to laugh because they can see it. You can also exaggerate a little, just enough to make the point clearer, not to embarrass him, but to highlight something everyone already understands. And here's an important one. Keep it inclusive. If the whole room can follow it, it works. If people feel left out, it doesn't. Because a great speech isn't about getting laughs from a few people. It's about bringing the entire room with you. And when you approach it this way, you take the pressure off yourself. You're not trying to perform, even though it feels like it. You're just pointing out what's already there, but in a way people enjoy. Now, here's where most people run into some real trouble. They write something that looks good on paper, but they never actually said it out loud. What reads well doesn't always sound natural, and what sounds natural has to be practiced that way. Not because you don't know what to say, but because your brain is trying to process everything in real time. And that's when things slow down, or speed up, or go off track completely. The fix is simple. You have to practice this out loud, not in your head, not just reading it silently, out loud. Because the first time you say this speech should not be at the wedding. Start by going through it in sections. Don't worry about being perfect. Just get used to how it sounds, where you pause, where it feels natural, and where it doesn't. Then go back and clean it up. If something feels awkward to say, change it. Because if it's hard to say in practice, it's going to be much harder under pressure. And there's something most people don't think about. Practice wearing what you're actually going to wear. Because everything feels different when you're standing up there in dress clothes with people watching. What felt comfortable earlier, wearing jeans and a hoodie or a t-shirt, can suddenly feel distracting, and nerves will amplify that. The last thing you want to do is to be adjusting your jacket, your tie, your collar, or your sleeves while you're trying to stay focused on what you're saying. The goal here is simple. Remove as many unknowns as possible. So when you step up to speak, this doesn't feel new. It feels familiar. And that's what builds confidence. Not guessing, not hoping, familiarity. Now, let's talk about those nerves without relying on liquid courage. Because no matter how prepared you are, you're going to feel something when you stand up. And that's normal. And that also means that you care about getting it right. But here's where people make a big mistake. They try to get rid of the nerves completely. And in trying to do that, they lose the one thing they actually need most, control. Because when you lose control, you start to talk faster than you planned, say more than you meant to say, or drift away from what you prepared. And that's when things become unpredictable. The goal isn't to eliminate nerves, it's to manage them. And the way you do that is through familiarity. with practice. Because when you've practiced this out loud, when you know the structure, when you've worked through the flow, you don't have to think as much in the moment. You're not searching for what comes next. You already know. So when you feel those nerves, you don't fight them. You let them be there and you focus on the next part, one section at a time. You're not trying to be perfect. You're just following a path you've already practiced. Now, let's talk about the actual delivery, because this is where everything comes together or goes sideways. And if it does go sideways, I'll show you what to do in just a moment. When you step up to speak, don't rush. The first instinct is to start fast, just to get through it. But that's what creates pressure. Instead, pause, take a breath, look around the room, then begin. That pause will settle you. That breath is going to help out. And it signals confidence to everyone there. As you move through your speech, focus on people, not the crowd. Look at a few familiar faces, then naturally move your attention around. You're not performing, although it does feel like it. You're speaking to them. Now, if you lose your place, don't panic. Nobody knows what you plan to say except you. Pause, take a breath, look around the room, and go back to your structure. Pick up from the last section you remember and continue. Keep your pace steady. Let moments land. You don't have to fill every second with words. Now, if something actually does go wrong, if you trip over a line, lose your place, or something doesn't land, don't try to fix it with a joke. Don't rush past it. Just reset. Take a breath and then continue. That's what people remember. Not that something went wrong, but how you handled it. A great best man speech isn't about being perfect. It's about being prepared, clear in your message, and confident in the moment. Because when you get this right, it becomes one of those moments people remember for all the right reasons. So here's to you, delivering a speech that lands, that people actually enjoy, and that fits the moment the way it should, to doing this right. Because this is one of those moments you only get one shot at. And if you want to feel this level of confidence in any speaking situation, not just this one, check out this video next. To you, to the bride, to the groom, congratulations. Have a wonderful life.